my peoples, what's up? My name is Jason. Thank you so much for joining me for another Dice Tower review. And it warms my heart to be able to bring you a review of this game. You see all of the Pandemic I have on my shelves over here. And so I had the distinct pleasure, finally, of getting, taking care of my health and keeping my friends safe and gathering together in 2021 to be able to play Pandemic Legacy Season 0. We had waited a whole year to get together for this one, so we were eagerly anticipating being able to play, and I'll let you know whether we were completely satisfied or otherwise. So the overview, because this was my friend's copy, is going to be a series of still shots. I hope that is sufficient for people to get a sense for what's in the box. If you want to, the moving version of that, then the Four Squares review has that elsewhere on the Dice Tower channel. But I will show you as much as I can in terms of gameplay, completely non-spoilery as far as I possibly can. I'll come back, give my complete non-spoilers thoughts, and maybe some a little bit, because otherwise I wouldn't have much to talk about in terms of very, very light spoilers, but that's at the end and clearly marked. So without further ado, let's go to the videotape. So right from the beginning, right when you open the box of Pandemic Legacy Season 0, the game's going to do a lot to immerse you in the world of the Cold War and working for the government as spies. So you have this debrief book, which looks just like something you would get in some kind of binder, or like a 3-ring binder or whatever they used back in the day. More top secret files. As you turn them over, you're going to start to get the legacy aspect to it. The numbers that you see in front of you are doors. And as you play each individual mission, it's going to tell you open door 12, open door 23, all that kind of thing. So what you see in terms of the folders, there's not like anything in the folders. It's more just kind of an oak tag type thing and a way to dispense all the door content for you. You go into the box a little bit more and you get more familiar legacy stuff. 8 boxes, if you're familiar with the games Pandemic Legacy 1 and 2. You also had the 8 boxes. One of those boxes, of course, was the oopsie. I lost too many games over here, so I think that this game also has the oopsie box as well. Diving a bit further into the componentry, each player is going to get a passport. The passport has multiple pages, and it's crafted such that you have a passport for your Allied side, your neutral side, and your Soviet side. So the game does not tell you how that plays out, whether you can flip from Allied to the different characters, or whether it's kind of an ongoing story thing where, you spend one game as this or one game as that, or maybe you burn an ally. The game's not really clear on that. It just gives you this component and it entices you to think about the possibilities of this new layer of character. And you already know, because the slots are there, that each character is going to have different upgrades. So mechanically, they're going to have different powers depending on which character you are in your passport. Also, you're going to have all sorts of cosmetic upgrades. If you've learned anything from Fortnite and League of Legends, people love their skins. People love to do up their characters. So there's plenty of hairstyles and clothing styles and glasses and all sorts of stuff to be able to get that thematic integration, along with all the mechanism, the room for mechanical flexibility there is in these passports. So now we get back to the player board, and the player board, if you're familiar with Pandemic, is basically cosmetically different, has the Twilight Struggle-esque aesthetic, but functionally it's like the original Pandemic board that you would see. Pandemic Legacy Season 2 had very tiny beginning, and then you opened up, you stickered out the entire world, kind of Fog of War style. Here, probably because it's a prequel and other different reasons, they go back to their roots and they give you all the usual cities, Rome and Istanbul and Baghdad, a couple new ones, Prague, Kiev, a couple others to increase with the motif. In this area are going to be objectives depending on different things that happen in the game. So you in the later months that I'm showing you, July, August, September, October, etc., there will be 3 objectives. You begin with 2, and then eventually when the game really hits its stride, it will offer you 3 objectives to finish. So Pandemic Legacy 0 differs a little bit in that they don't give you the binary win-loss condition. You can get what the game calls adequate success, which is completing 2 of the missions. So You get a little bit less funding, or you get a little bit more funding, a little bit less stars for upgrades. But the key thing is you continue to advance. So you can get an adequate success, you can miss an objective, and still progress the game, where in previous editions, if you missed one or two objectives, then they'd make you restart and play the second half of the month, or whatever that is. Speaking of Pandemic getting back to its roots a little bit, there are your four beginning pawns. They begin in Washington this time, not necessarily Atlanta, to reflect the fact that it's more of a bureaucratic adventure as opposed to an epidemiological adventure. And there's your nice, snazzy government building that you start with. And here is your slate of actions. So you're going to recognize many of them, so charter flights and movement and that kind of thing. And there's also other kinds of movement that I won't dwell too much on. But on the right side, you see action space, which has plenty of room for additional actions and ways to conquer the missions that are coming up. So far, I've shown you what is the same. Here are where you get to some significant differences, and I'll articulate three significant differences. First of all, it is the Soviets. So these are Soviet agents, and they're going to be populating the board as the disease cubes would. They work a lot differently in the sense that they don't epidemic style explode from place to place. It's more, kind of enemies that are getting in your way in terms of the larger objectives that are going on. The Soviets are definitely secondary to a lot of the objectives and the hidden things that are moving on. But they do get in your way. So that's something that you have to account for. The second thing behind the Soviets are those tanks. Those tanks are very, very important. So instead of taking my 5 cards, which I still have the same cards as any game of Pandemic, but instead of taking those cards and discarding them to quote unquote cure a disease, because you can't cure a Soviet, after all, you make these cars. And they become kind of a 5th and 6th player. You almost like kind of multiply your forces on the board, and they act a lot like the medic would in a basic game of Pandemic. So you would move the tank onto the board, and at the end of the turn it would kind of wipe out whatever Soviets were there. So the game will feel like, at least in the beginning, it will feel like you're being overrun by the Soviets. And you're just kind of like, nip and tuck trying to get things done. But eventually you get these tanks out, and the tanks are going to take care. So I'm showing a board covered with Soviets right now. Once you get the tanks coming, that's exactly what you need to kind of turn the game around. So it's funny it's not funny, it's probably done completely intentionally, how a few of the beginning games kind of put you behind the 8 ball a little bit, but then once you get those tanks, you've called the medic, and now they're the tanks are ready to sweep out the Soviets so that you can do your mission and begin your penetration into the story and everything else that is going on with Pandemic Legacy Season 0. So that was Pandemic Legacy Season 0 at the table. I guess, it's so hard to talk about it without giving any spoilers out at all. So I'll just give my overall impressions, almost like a final rating before I talk about anything particular with the game. This one is 9.5 out of 10. Seal of excellence. Not even a question. We played over 4th of July weekend, and then we came back in August, and we picked it right up, and we could not wait. Bang, bang, bang. Playing game after game after game. And, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm not pulling all-nighters like I used to do in my friend's basement playing D&D. I got kids, I got family, but still, getting up that energy and just, following through and sticking with the story. I really, really enjoyed what Pandemic Legacy Season 0 had to offer. I would rank it right in the middle between Pandemic Legacy Season 1, which was a sublime experience for me, possibly because it was the first one. It was so unique in the space. Pandemic Legacy Season 2, I also enjoyed. That one's a 9 out of 10 for me. That one would be the bottom of the Pandemic Legacies because it went experimental, and there was certain things about the grandiosity and the length of the different games in Season 2. Which, was good and enjoyable, but I felt like Season 0 was, it overcame that issue. It's definitely not 2. I think it was a lot of the bolts were tightened for Season 0. Lessons learned from Season 1 and Season 2 to deliver possibly the tightest, most cohesive, most lessons learned type experience in terms of Pandemic Legacy. Having three shots at it, I can only imagine. Just like we know this, we know this, we know this. It especially came through going through the rule book. And when we would get new mechanisms, every month we'll give a new mechanism, something to open, and we found that more than any of the other games, the answer was right in the rulebook. Edge cases were addressed right in the rulebook. So it'll say, do this, if this, then this. And this takes precedence over this. So we would go through the game and we'd have a question. We'd go back to the rulebook and it's like, oh, right, that's why the rulebook said that. So I felt like the friction level was lower here than in any of the other two games. And if that's something that is important to you in your gaming experience, you get frustrated by rules, ambiguities. This one I found was just smooth, as smooth as you could possibly make a giant legacy game that can go in multiple directions. Another example where the design chops just really increased to the highest levels, I feel, was the introduction of different victory conditions, the adequate success. So then you have your major success and you have a fail condition, but you also have adequate success. I have 3 objectives. I only completed 2. You get adequate success, which is less points, less chance for upgrade, but you get a little bit more funding, and then you can move on to the next scenario. Keeps you going. What am I playing? 18, 19, 24 games of Pandemic for? I don't really need that, especially if I'm playing the same modules over and over again. The other 2 games may have fallen into that trap a little bit of playing the same scenario over and over. If you struggled, here you get an adequate success, which is not impossible, and move on. And, we were able to, have, especially in the land of, where we're going through right now, where we can't get together as much, having the option of, okay, just take the adequate success and go, made sure that you can complete the thing. How many groups weren't able to complete their Pandemic Legacy because, they got stuck somewhere or somebody lost so much that they quit and your group kind of fell apart? Is that ideal? No, but you design for people. And if people want that, if people want the ability to have a more limited success for the sake of staying with the game, I love that the game, Pandemic Legacy Zero, gives you that option. Really, really well done on the mechanism level. So that's, I gave my rating and I gave my thoughts about the general flow of it. If you don't want to hear any spoilers whatsoever, then I think you're good. Right now, I'm just going to give very, very light spoilers here. So you are in the Cold War era, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Not locating the year. It's across one year, but that's the era in which you're talking about. So in terms of the story, I feel like Season 0, leaned into the spy thriller of it, and it kind of gave you a slow burn throughout. Season 1 was definitely more like an A-Team or a 24, or for you youngins, Falcon and Winter Soldier or something like that, where there are a lot of kind of set pieces, climactic moments, turns of mechanism. All of a sudden, I'm playing a different game than when I started. Here, the experience was a lot more stable, at a simmer, and, eventually come into a boil. So our last couple of months did have, more noteworthy things happen. And things really look different on the board. So I guess what I'm saying is Season 0 didn't really lean into those climaxes as much, but it approached it a different way. It spent more time with the characters, like not our personal characters, but like the NPCs, so to speak, the people that kind of guided you through your mission. Spent more time with the government. There's a lot in this game that makes you feel like you work for the government. I'll just leave that as is, because there is some bureaucracy stuff that happens, and which is pretty neat and matters in terms of the gameplay, which was also a pretty satisfying thing. Mechanism-wise, the Season 0 leans a lot heavily on the teams. So as I explained in the overview, you're going to throw your cards down, but you're not going to like cure anything. You're going to create this little van, and they're your teams. And you're going to create more and more vans, and they're going to kind of go to different spots on the board. And at the beginning, their role is obvious. They're like basically the medic. So they're going to clean things, clean the Soviet soldiers a little bit more efficiently than you could otherwise. As they go on, I feel like the game finds ways to play with those teams and gives you more to do, gives you more victory conditions that depend on having the teams in certain areas. So it's going to feel different than a lot of pandemics that you've played because none of them have this extra character that you're going to be moving around. So does it feel like every game of Pandemic you've ever played? Well, I mean, it's up to you whether you think that's enough. And there's more in terms of what's introduced, but if you've played Legacy and you've played the different versions, you're kind of used to the more. And so, do you feel like that extra piece of the teams is enough to give you enough, interest and juice over the however many games you take? Yeah, I thought it was okay. I mean, I'm a huge Pandemic fan, so of course I think it's okay. But just kind of thinking about if you're kind of on the fence of Pandemic, is it enough for you? I think I think there's a potential for there to be. It isn't just like 12 more games of Pandemic. I didn't feel. Finally, the big appeal, more than everything, the characters. I really loved the characters. Thematically fun. I wouldn't say that this was the richest thematic experience in the world with the passports and switching from person to person. It was cool having the stickers, and I suppose one could have developed little stories for each of the aliases and everything. It's there for you, but I don't know that the game really sucked you in and invited you to individuate your three characters on a thematic story. It was simply fun, and the actual product of it, the passport and everything, that all worked. It was cool. The best part of it, though, was the mechanism integration. Switching between characters, having an upgrade on one side, like neutral side, but oh no, my other upgrade, which would be perfect for this situation, is on the other side, so I got to spend an action. I got to go to a place, spend an action, and flip around to the right character so that they can get the job done. Added another layer of puzzle besides the team. So I'd say the teams and the flipping together of the characters created different puzzles for the Pandemic player to solve. And rest assured, because you're flipping back and forth, the game has ways of adding extra actions into the system to compensate for that. So it's not impossible to, you're not like spending all of a sudden a third of your action economy on this flipping back and forth, which in and of itself is not cool. But if you have the slack to switch back and forth and solve problems, which is introduced by extra actions, different event cards also help you out with that. I just, again, goes back to how well designed this is, how integrated everything felt. Excellent, 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 excellent. Love the mechanical integration of the characters as well. Pandemic's my favorite game. Pandemic Legacy, 3 of my favorite games. If I had to rate all the Legacy games, I've played most of them at this point. Pandemic is going to be the top 3 Legacy games that I've played. And 0 sits right there. So if your group has been waiting for a chance to play it, because it's been waiting for a year, or if you forgot that it came out because it came out last year and all of a sudden we couldn't hang out, it'd be a good time to reach back, go ahead and pick it up, and have a really, really awesome shared experience to celebrate, hopefully, the getting together of people. But if that's not possible for your situation, then I wish everybody here a happy and healthy gaming life. Do what you got to do to stay healthy. But if you can, Pandemic 0. This is Jason reminding you, if you can change your mind, you can change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.